Everybody, just before we get started with the show here, I want to make a quick shout out to the good folks at Springs Homes for supporting Studio 809 and this podcast. They're in the business of real estate because they love helping clients achieve their goals. Competitive, collaborative, and trustworthy. Meet the real estate pros at springshomes.com.
This is Studio 809.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. I am your host, Hiking Bob Falcone. You could find everything you want to know about what I'm doing, where I'm at, all that other kind of good stuff at hikingbob.com, the new and improved hikingbob.com website. And there's links to my social media accounts, my column, The Colorado Springs Independent, all the other podcasts we've done, my hiking guidebook, and also my photography website, all of that at hikingbob.com. Today I have with me is Wild Westendorf. Say hi, Kevin.
Hey, everyone. It's great to be back on here. And I did check out your new website. It looks great.
Thanks.
Your old one was fine, but this is so much prettier. And the UI is it's nicer to look at.
Yeah, the old one was functional, but it looked like it was made in the 1990s when the internet was a new thing.
And you can find me at my website, which is wildwestendorf.com, and on social media, primarily Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Wild Westendorf.
And this podcast is also part of the Studio 809 podcast group, and you can find them at studio809podcast.com. And they also have a newsletter you can sign up for, and also we have a newsletter for them. You can go to studio809podcast.com, sign up for the newsletter there, and go to my website and sign up for my newsletter. They're not the same thing, so you get different content. Kevin, it's a cold and blustery day here in Colorado. We're recording this the evening before it goes out, so if you're listening to this on Wednesday, we're recording it Tuesday evening. And it's been a cold and blustery day. With unfortunately, we're gonna sound like a broken record here, with no snow on the ground.
Which are the worst kinds of cold days.
Yeah.
Because if it's gonna be cold, I want there to be snow. For some reason, that makes the cold more acceptable to me.
Yeah. At least there's something you can look at.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it's snowing around us. We're I think Matt Meister over at Fox 21. Referred to this as a donut type of a thing. We kind of have this hole that we're in, and everything's snowing around us. So there's snow out there.
Yeah.
I think up on Monument Hill they're getting snow. To the west of us they're getting snow. But I don't think anybody's getting a whole lot of snow out of this right now. But there is some snow out there. Which brings us to, and you and I, we've talked about this a lot in the past, about climate change and, why our winters aren't as snowy as they've been in the past, why they've been warmer. It was 55 degrees over the weekend, and I was out trying to get pictures of eagles up at Bar Lake, and last year when I was up there it was like 10 below zero, and and of course there's going to be variations from time to time. That's weather. We're talking about climate, and one way, the one metric I look at for what kind of winter we're having is just look over at Pikes Peak, and when more of Pikes Peak is gray from the rock showing through it than it is white, which it's been most of this summer, or winter, I'm sorry. And there's when you look at the east side of Pikes Peak, when you look at it from town here, and you look at the face, that east face of it, and there's like this bowl up there. And I remember, after being here for 30 years, when you would have a winter when that whole peak would be white, and that bowl would almost be filled with snow. Now that bowl just looks like a big rock bowl.
Yep, exactly.
Of course, if we can see snow from here up there, there's probably a fair amount of snow up there. Probably, obviously, it's 14,000 feet. There's a whole lot more snow up there than there is down here. But I don't recall hearing that the Pikes Peak Highway is closed for a day for snow removal in a while. The road's open all year round. They only close it when there's snow until they remove it, then they open the road back up. And you can see more rock and dirt than you can snow up there. So obviously things have changed, I guess is the best way to put it.
And I was actually up on Pikes Peak on Monday for a friend's birthday. It was closed at mile 13 because of the recent snow that came in on Sunday. Still a gorgeous drive up to that point, but up until you get close to tree line, there's not even a whole lot of snow on the ground in the forest. There's some snow. I'm just used to, at this point of winter, that there's substantial amount of snow at this point, where the last few times there's been a snowstorm up on Pikes Peak. There's a lot of snow at the top for a couple days, and then it goes back to being very, very gray again.
Yeah, it's and we're not going to belabor the point. We're not going to get into a big debate over climate change and what causes it or anything like that. I would hope that at least everybody would acknowledge that things have changed, and the cause of that's probably a debatable issue. But, it is a little frustrating that, I wore my snowshoes maybe once or twice last year. Now, to be fair, if you want to take a 2-hour drive or 3-hour drive west of Colorado Springs, you can get in enough snow to go snowshoeing, cross-country skiing. But traditionally, it's been you didn't have to go that far. You had to go maybe to Mueller State Park, Florissant Fossil Beds, Horse Thief Park, the Crags Trail to be able to do that stuff. And now that's becoming more and more of a thing that you can't do that close to Colorado Springs. Even here in town, if you got there right after it snowed, there would usually be enough snow to go up on the Seven Bridges Trail, for example.
Oh, yeah.
I've even snowshoed in Red Rock Canyon open space if you got there while it was snowing or right after it was snowing. I haven't done that in a long time either. So there's obviously some stuff going on. You sent me a great link to an NPR story, and it's a print story, so people can go back and look at this. And we'll include a link in the show notes. But it's a really good one about the drought and how, for example, they talk about Lake Powell. And I really like the way this one guy talks about that he's got a rock that is growing behind his houseboat.
Yeah.
And we know that rocks don't grow, but actually what's happening was just last year when he moored his boat there, this rock was underwater. Now this rock is above his boat. So it tells you just how much things have changed in just a year.
Yeah.
In there. It's a little scary. We should all... And is there much we can do about it individually? There are little things we can do, obviously. Is there much we can do about it as a community, as a global thing? That's a constant battle people are fighting over. But I think that it's something that we should all be paying attention to. Now that especially they may start rationing water to places like Phoenix and Las Vegas and Los Angeles. And that's because that's our water. And, we get first dibs on it. But it may happen here. Now, Colorado Springs gets a lot of its water from not the Colorado River necessarily that feeds those places, but from the mountains and stuff like that, which are fed by snowfall, which we get less of. And I just think we should keep it in the back of our minds when we wonder why we're wearing lighter clothes and it's 50 degrees in January, why that's happening. As much as we may like it and it's comfortable, it's not the way it should be.
And like on a selfish level, on an individual level, like I enjoy a mild winter because I don't like being cold. I think it's because I'm originally from Vegas. I thrive in warm weather, and I get cabin fever really easily. So if the weather is just icy cold, or if there's like just a ton of snow, which I like snow, but if I'm forced to stay inside for too long, I just go nuts. And it's making me realize that there are areas in the Southwest, especially the Lake Powell area, Glen Canyon, that I have not been to yet, or I've driven by it, that I should probably go out there very, very soon, probably this spring, this summer, just because it's not going to be the same anymore. And being from Vegas, we regularly went to Lake Mead. When I was a kid, I remember it being, it was like an ocean, but I was also a young kid at the time.
So everything looked like an ocean.
Yeah. But we would go jet skiing and have boats and all that stuff, and a lot of that is gone now. And I was at Lake Mead in November of 2020, and I was just sad to see how low the water has gotten.
Yeah. Well, if you wait too much longer, you might be able to just walk across it.
Yeah,
which would not be a good thing. Really, you and I are not going to solve this problem, but it should be something people pay attention to, especially if there are places you want to see.
Yeah,
you might want to kind of move that along a little bit. But that brings us to you just did some hiking over the last week or so in the new trails in Sweetwater Canyon.
Yep,
that new addition of all those new trails that they added at. In North Cheyenne Canon Park. And I'm going to ask you about that in a minute, but one of the things you told me about that was you were way up, and that's way up there in the park. And the snow you saw up there was none.
Minimal, yeah. Right. There's, even in long stretches of very shaded areas that are, in very narrow, I wouldn't say gulches. I'm not sure what the right term would be, but like you're kind of down in this canyon between Mount Muskoka and the Gold Camp Road area. And just from experience at this time of the year, once it snows in those areas, it's there all winter. It just gets iced over and snow packed and stuff over time. But yeah, just aside from a few stretches, there was no snow or ice anywhere. Just some stretches in very, very shaded parts. I brought my spikes because I thought I would need them, and nothing.
Yeah, I am hearing from Staunton State Park, for example, that they've had off and on snow there. Their biggest issue is freezing because they have a couple places where the creeks, the water expands when it freezes. So they have a couple places there where the creeks are running over the trails, and they are warning people about the snow and the ice there. But yeah, you're right. It used to be that you'd have snow up on the Seven Bridges Trail and Gold Camp Road and the St. Mary's Falls Trail all year long, and now, or I'm sorry, not all year long, but all winter long, and now you're not seeing as much of that. But that gets me to tell me about what you thought about those new trails in Sweetwater Canyon.
They did a fantastic job on the trails. I parked at the parking lot at the top, which again, they did an amazing job on that lot too.
Beautiful.
Like every time I go up there, I'm just like, oh yeah, I forgot it's paved now. And then I took Gold Camp Road past the third tunnel. Then you go a little, like not even a quarter mile, maybe.
It's about a half a mile.
It's a half mile.
I've clocked it. Yeah, it's about a half a mile from there to the top of the
it's a Daniels
Pass Trail. Yeah, it's about half a mile.
And they did a great job with the trail markers too. I mean, just very clear, very very plain English. I mean, just and they stand out too.
Yeah, those new square posts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I took that down. Then I did. I want to say I did a good chunk of Sweetwater Canyon counterclockwise, and then went past the other side of Daniels Pass to connect to the Bruin Trail area and the Buffalo Canyon area too. Did a little side detour to Helen Hunt Falls because I was like, every time I'm here, this place is packed, even in the wintertime. So it was very weird being there and there's no cars anywhere. And then I just went back to the Bruin Trail and I took that back up to the car.
Neat.
So it was over 7 miles of a round trip hike.
I'm gonna say 7 or 8. So you made a big loop around about 7 or 8 miles.
Yeah, and what's especially nice about about these new trails is like you now have several options for loops, and just like for you, Mount Muskoka is a near and dear mountain to me, but I prefer loops over out and backs. Yeah. And now I can turn that into a loop, especially or a big loop if I wanted to, instead of just a quick out and back. Yeah,
and I've written a couple articles in the Indy this past fall about the different loops. One of which started where you were at and going around and coming back Daniels Pass. The other one I did about we kind of went down the Upper Columbine, down the Bruin Trail up to Mount Muskoka. Did that and came back, but you could do a loop there and some people. And then I did another one where we went to the Captain Jack's Trailhead by Tunnel Number 1.
Okay.
Came down Spring Creek and then went up around Mount Muskoka and then came back down part of it. And that was like an 8-ish mile hike. And then came back down Daniels Pass and then went back up, up the Upper Columbine and then back over to Spring Creek and then back up. I'll put links to all those articles I did. There were 3 of them that I did over the course of 3 weeks about these different things. And, of course, there are a lot of other options. You could also start down at Starsmore Discovery Center, hike up the lower and mid-Columbine and do loops there. There's so many options. But you're right, a loop trail is always more fun than an out and back. And especially if it's a loop trail, 7-8 mile loop trail is doable for most people, most hikers who are going to venture out that far anyway.
Yeah.
These trails are only that long. These loops are only that long, too, because the road is closed.
Yep.
So you have to start from Gold Camp Road. When they open up North Cheyenne Canyon Road at the end of May, hopefully by Memorial Day, they'll be open when they're done that big road project. Then you'll be able to actually park at the Daniels Pass Trailhead or at the Mount Cutler, Mount Muskoka Trailhead or at Helen Hunt Falls and do these loops, and it'll actually be even a little shorter, and I think they'll be a lot more fun, too.
And what's great about the new trails is I think that unless if you decide to go up to the summit of Muskoka, there's just not a whole lot of elevation gain. In the parts that I did, because I did not take the second part of Daniels Pass up to the summit, but yeah, just it was it was like a nice meandering trail. Now, the part of Daniels Pass from Gold Camp Road to Sweetwater, depending on which direction you go, yeah, that's an uphill climb, but but the switchbacks are done really well. So you're not climbing. I mean, it's a consistent uphill, but I mean, it was nice.
Yeah, people remember the old Daniels Pass Trail, which was basically from North Cheyenne Canyon Road, so it was straight up.
Yeah.
It was like one big switchback, and it was straight up. It was, barely sustainable, if sustainable at all. It was just a mess. Now that, they've taken out that straight and put in a lot of really long switchbacks, lengthened it, obviously, because, switchbacks are longer than a straight line, but they are sustainable, and it makes it easier. I've always figured out how to do them so that the tough part is always the downhill part. So I'm getting old of this climbing uphill stuff. I'm going to figure out how to do this downhill. So if you started that's the nice thing about starting at that paved parking lot, the Powell lot. You go around Gold Camp Road like you did, and then you have some uphill again to get up there, but the steepest part is actually downhill.
Yeah.
And then you can work your way back uphill, so it's a lot easier that way. So there's so many options, though, and that's the thing. If anything, we encourage anybody is to just look at your different options. I know when I did the loop starting at Captain Jack, I went to Sweetwater, made a right, went down Daniels Pass. Somebody else said, no, I went left and did the whole loop, and they made like an 11-mile hike. Perfect.
Yeah, and I love those options.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to sit there at an intersection and go, well, I can go either way and still get back to where I want. Just one might be a little longer than the other. The views are different. Everything's different. So it's a whole lot of fun. Definitely credit to the Parks Department for taking on that job and really doing a nice job. The contractors they hired, Remfe and some other people they hired to do that actually did a really nice job on that hike. I don't think they have those in the Cotrex app yet, and I'm
looking at it now, and I'm not seeing the updated trails.
I'm going to pester them a little bit because they told me they were going to have all that stuff updated by the end of the year. I did think they meant 2021, but maybe they meant 22.
Now, there is a map that you can get from the city website, which I thought was very clear. And so I use that to just kind of pick and choose, like, do I want to go left or right at the trail forks? But yeah, it would be nice once it's updated on the Cotrex, though.
Those trails there are not on the Cotrex app, but they are on
the city website, and it comes in as a PDF, so you can store it on your phone for offline use, or you could do a printout of the map. I found it for being the old school way of doing things, quote unquote. The map is extremely easy to read, and I use that in order to pick, like, do I want to make a left here or right here at the various forks in the trail. Cool.
There are links in at least one of the two of those articles to that PDF that you can download and get that map. So grab that. The City Parks Department did promise me they were going to have Cotrex updated. They haven't done it yet. I will put a bug in somebody's ear and find out what's taking them so long. These trails have been there these trails obviously are brand new, but there are other trails in North Cheyenne Canyon that are not on there that have been there for a little while. So they're a little behind in that. So we got around to this, and the other part we're talking about is winter weather stuff. And we have talked about this before, and we've discussed winter weather, and everybody knows dress in layers. We talk about that stuff all the time. But we've also talked about search and rescue operations.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that a lot, and I get it. And people have discussed, and they're even doing it in some states where they're going to charge people for search and rescue operations. In Arizona, they refer to it as the idiot fee. I'm not prepared to go that far. I obviously, I don't want to be here pointing fingers and name calling or victim shaming. But there are times when people put themselves into positions that they probably shouldn't be in, and that puts other people at risk to go get them. And one of the things that came up here recently was they had this big snowstorm in the Carolinas, which has had more snow by far than we've had here.
Which is wild to me.
Yeah, but I mean, there are mountains in the Carolinas, but they're not 14,000-foot peaks. Their highest peak might not even be as high as Colorado Springs, for crying out loud.
Oh, yeah.
But still, they're having a whole lot more snow than we are here. And, of course, their snow is wet, heavy stuff because they're right on the coast. In any case, there was this big snowstorm in the Carolinas. This was about a week or so ago. And
do you know which part of the Carolinas?
this is in the Raleigh area.
Oh, okay.
Raleigh, North Carolina. So there were plenty of warnings out there. You know, sleet, snow, freezing rain, high snowfall, winter storm advisories, winter storm watches, hazardous conditions, and dangerous impacts. The governor's even telling people, prepare for a significant storm, pay close attention to the weather forecast. But a guy who set out on Saturday, mind you, the snowstorm started on Friday. Well, actually, Friday's when they started issuing the warnings. Along the 30-mile Art Loeb Trail in Pisgah National Forest, where he decided he was going to go hiking camp in a blizzard. Ended up having a 6-person rescue team had to come get him. They had, the trail is listed as strenuous, which takes you up the summits of Black Balsam Knob and Tennant Mountain in western North Carolina, which are considered difficult even in good weather. And when you see these difficulty ratings, they typically are good weather difficulty ratings. They're typically not bad weather because, of course, that changes everything. So they don't identify who this person is, which is probably for the better. Hikes up there. Conditions worsened Sunday morning. He had spent a frigid night on the trail. The weather was more than he was prepared to handle, and sure enough, now it becomes a search and rescue operation. And these people, these crews, 6 pairs of people in snowshoes, they drove as far as they could on a 4-wheel drive road that was closed to all but emergency users. Got as far as they could in 4-wheel drive, had to hike in the rest of the way, find this guy. Fortunately, he wasn't injured. Had to hike back down. But all because he ignored all the warnings.
Yep, and especially when the governor is coming out to say, hey, this is going to be a serious storm. In this modern age, like we're all so connected, and I doubt there's not many folks out there who are like, I don't have TV, I don't have a smartphone, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, you're going to find out from the radio, the TV, your smartphone, if there's warnings. I make sure I get those on my phone and I get those for the mildest warnings. Just because it's just smart, and it's smart to look at the forecast. It just to know what your week is going to look like. Okay, so I live in an apartment complex with a laundry room that's like a building over, and I'll see like, okay, it's going to snow a lot on Wednesday, or it's going to rain a lot on Wednesday, so I need to get my laundry done on a Tuesday, just so I'm not hauling all that stuff out. I mean, even for simple stuff like that. So if you're going to plan a trip where you hike and camp and there's a blizzard, I don't understand that.
You know, and part of it is what is there to enjoy with that? You know, when you go out for a hike, you want to go out and enjoy the views. Yeah, some of these hikes are tough. And some of that is part of the enjoyment. This is a rigorous trail, and I managed to climb up this mountain, like doing a 14er.
Yeah.
You do a 14er, it's a rigorous hike, you get up there. But it's during good weather. You know, you get to see everything around you. What do you gain, unless you're trying to prove something to yourself, what do you gain from going out in a blizzard and doing this? And typically it ends up like this.
Yeah, like everyone I know, even the like avid outdoors folks that love the winter and have all the gear, when they go backpacking in the winter, the weather is nice and they have the right gear. They're able to hike a couple miles in. It's never a huge round trip like you would do in the summertime, and they're able to set up camp, have a little campfire, and just enjoy being next to a little lake or something.
Exactly. And people like do the hut hikes, like up in the old 10th Mountain Division hut hikes. They're not doing it during the blizzard. They're waiting it out until the weather is good, because you just put everybody at risk. There's just no point in it. And this, of course, brings up the conversation again about charging for search and rescue operations. Yeah. Nobody really wants to do that. The search and rescue people don't want to do that. But every time this happens, the public starts screaming, well, make that so-and-so pay for it. And it's hard to do, but that's happening more and more often. We've talked about that in the past. And I think you're going to see where if people start doing this kind of stuff, going out there when they shouldn't go out there, when the Weather Bureau is saying it's going to be nasty, when the governor's saying you really shouldn't go out there, when the emergency management people are saying this is going to be a dangerous storm, that is not the time to strap on your backpack and go hiking off into the woods.
Yeah.
It's a dumb idea, and it puts people at risk. And yeah, if you say that that's what these search and rescue people signed up for, I will say partially yes and partially no. Accidents happen. We've talked about this. You could be the best prepared person in the world, and you could slip on a rock and hurt yourself. You can anything. It's the outdoors. There are unknown risks, and there are a multitude of unknown risks. You can be the best prepared person, have something happen, you need to be rescued. That happens. But when you put yourself in a position like this guy did, and so many other people have done, by just going out there when you're not supposed to go out there, when they're telling you not to go out there, and you put yourself at risk, this is putting more and more ammunition into the argument for people to say, make them pay for it. And nobody wants to see that happen. They shouldn't have to. But, I'm hearing more and more from people saying, we hear you, and we're getting kind of tired of going out there because people are just too dumb to pay attention to the weather.
You know me, I'm a huge fan of Instagram. I love to post all my adventures on there. I do think the popularity of social media has fueled this huge increase.
Without a doubt.
And then, of course, COVID and all that, kind of pushed a lot more folks outside. And I think it's inspiring a lot of people to explore the outdoors, which great. On the surface, that's great. But they don't realize what it actually takes to do these things. Like, this is not walking on a paved sidewalk and Garden of the Gods. This is you're going out into a blizzard with no resources or anything except for what's on your back. And I've seen this a bunch of times in person. I know you have too, especially the time we both saw it when we saw those two guys trying to hike up Pikes Peak in November of 2020 with street clothes and sneakers. Well, the one guy had dress shoes on. They were wanting to hike up to the top of Pikes Peak, and it was 9 o'clock in the morning. It could have been a disaster, but their egos were very, very large. And thankfully, I'm assuming they made it back down safe once we saw them at bar camp. But and I've seen this happen in every season too. It's not just a winter thing. It's every season, and you have these people who way underestimate their ability, and they overestimate how dangerous Mother Nature is.
Actually, kind of the opposite. They overestimate how good they are.
Yes,
and underestimate.
Sorry,
yeah. That's actually the most common thing. People think I can do this. And they're not paying attention to the weather. Again, we're not, we mention these things not because we want to beat this person up. We don't know who it is, and that's fine. I don't care. We mention these things because they can so easily be avoided. And like I tell people, don't be that person who ignores everything and just goes out anyway and then ends up being a search and rescue operation. Search and rescue is there for a reason. I was a firefighter for 40 years. I was there for a reason. But it doesn't make you happy when it's somebody who puts themselves in harm's way when they could have avoided it, and then you have to go out there and risk your neck to get people out of that. And that's the point we're trying to make here. If the weather's bad that day, you may just have to stay home, and you may miss that weekend that you had planned. And does it suck? Yeah. It sucks.
I've been there several times before.
Yeah. Nobody's happy when they had this nice hike plan and a blizzard rolls in, or it's a day of thunderstorms. We talk about the summer and monsoon season, and you want to get hit by lightning, or you don't want to be drenched wet, or you don't want to have a flash flood. Yeah, and it sucks when your plans go right, which is the way you always tell people, have plan A, B, C, and D, so you can do something else. In the winter, when the blizzard's rolling in, it's not the day to go out hiking. That's the day to curl up in front of a TV, binge watch Ozark on Netflix or something, and maybe have the fire going in the fireplace and the hot chocolate going next to you, which could become an Irish coffee later on.
Exactly,
and do something like that. And that's just the bet. There's no reward points for going out there and getting in trouble and then having to get rescued. There's no reward points for that.
And you mentioned before how when the weather is like that, it goes from a point of like first it's no fun, and then it's survival mode, and that's just no.
Yeah. And the other way you can support, of course, it's always a good gesture to support the search and rescue teams. So if you're a hiker, you can get the COSAR card here in Colorado, which is money that goes into a fund. If you get a hunting or fishing license, there's a fee that's attached to all those that you cannot opt out of. that goes into that fund. And what that fund doesn't pay anybody's salary. It just helps some of these search and rescue teams, which are every one of them in the state is volunteer. It helps them reimburse them for costs if they lose a piece of equipment or they need a piece of equipment. It helps them get that equipment back. And don't forget, even though the search and rescue operation may be free, if you end up having to come out of there in a medical helicopter, that ain't for free. The ambulance ain't for free. And I can tell you, those things can be really expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Helicopter rides are into tens of thousands of dollars if you need a helicopter ride there. So just don't do that. Just don't put yourself in that position. Do accidents happen? Yep, they happen all the time. You can be the best prepared person in the world. Happens all the time. Nobody's ever going to give you grief for an accident that just happens. That's the nature of it. It's the outdoors. But don't put yourself in harm's way when there's just no good reason for it.
No point for it, yeah.
No point to it. We'll move on from there.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about is, Kevin, this podcast and my column at The Independent are up for an Outdoor Media Award.
Nice.
The voting is done on Facebook, and there are a number of polls, but we're up for those 2 awards. We're the underdog in this thing.
Oh, yeah.
And we're up against podcasts that have a big nationwide reach, funded by big companies, and with much stronger media, I have a bigger reach, I guess is the best way I can put it. But we still like to make a good showing. So what we're asking people is to support us by voting for the best podcast and the best blog column. And we'll have links to that. You just click on the link. It goes to the Facebook page. If you don't see us on there in the first few, you just scroll down and you just click next to the dot for the podcast or the column, and then that's your vote. And we really appreciate everybody's help with that. There will be links in the show notes that go with this. If you're on my email newsletter, you got that twice last week. I sent out a special one last week and then one later for that. So if you're a member of those, if you see that, and share it with your Facebook friends too, and ask them to vote for us. We really, 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 really would appreciate it. We just want to make a good showing.
Yeah.
I know we're up against some tough stuff, but I think we want to show people that, it gets attention to people that this is a pretty cool, I like to say, pretty cool podcast and a pretty good column.
Yeah, and it's so much fun to do every week and such too. So
yeah, and we get a lot of good people on here. So with that, Kevin, I think we've covered everything that we had on our little list of things to talk about. And let's see. Yep, we got them.
All right, and I just have a quick thing. So I was nominated to be Time's Sexiest Man Alive for 2022. So if you could just get out there, get the vote out, I would really, really appreciate that.
You're going to give us a link for that, right? So it's up between you and George Clooney again, or what?
Yep, exactly. Every year.
I think you got it bagged. I think you'll be fine. So there you have it. Best podcast, best column, and Kevin for Sexiest Man Alive. How could any of us lose? I don't see how that can happen.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening to the Outdoors Hiking Bob podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
We'll talk to you soon.
See you, everybody.
Before you go, did you know you can rate and review our Studio 809 podcasts? That will help us because our egos really need to have thousands and thousands of listeners. But that helps our wonderful sponsors reach more ears too. And we do love our sponsors. So just go to Studio 809 or any individual 809 podcast in your iTunes or podcast app and click on ratings and reviews. Thanks.